Well, hello, all of you fantastic podcast listeners out there in podcast listening land. Yeah.
Yeah.
You you are joining me and Annie again for the Top 5 podcast. And no surprise that I'm talking with Annie Pruitt. How are you, my darling sister, love of my life, host of my life?
I'm doing I'm doing okay. I'm surviving the holidays so far and just a couple weeks to go to completely survive. But yeah, we're doing okay.
We're doing okay. And you are wearing a return t-shirt. Is that a pop culture reference t-shirt?
It is. It's a My Chemical Romance t-shirt. So when they first
Oh.
announced they were going to reunite and go on tour again, this was one of the first t-shirts that came out.
Got it. Okay. Because I was halfway thinking that it might be a Return of the Jedi t-shirt, but
Yeah.
I'm like way off there, huh?
Yeah, no, I don't have any Star Wars like clothing in my, but lots and lots of rock and roll t-shirts, and I have like 5 My Chemical Romance t-shirts.
Of course you do. Like
Of course.
I have 2 Go-Go's t-shirts and they're exactly the same shirt, except
Yeah.
one is a men's size and one is a woman's size. And the men's size,
Yes.
poor Go-Go's, like you can barely see their faces anymore. It's very sad.
Yeah. So like I could do a top 5 podcast on the top 5 reasons why I love My Chemical Romance. But I don't
Mm.
do that with
Yeah, that might have to be a solo show. I thought, because all right, so total sidebar here before we talk about our actual topic. I've been going down this big comedy rabbit hole of late, and I discovered the Jay and Silent Bob Get Old podcast, which actually wound up being a live podcast that they recorded over like maybe 8 weeks, where Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes tell the story of Jason's heroin addiction and recovery. And it's
wow.
funny and endearing all at the same time. So then, I'm a huge fan of Kevin Smith movies. So I just started going down the Kevin Smith rabbit hole. And I've since watched The Last Blockbuster. I watched his silent but deadly comedy show that he did in Phoenix that happened to be the night that he had that big scary heart attack that everybody talks about.
Wow. Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, there will probably be some kind of View Askewniverse top 5 topic at some point. And I think I'm going to email those men. I'm going to send them a direct message on Insta and I'm going to invite them to come co-host with us because I think they would just be all over that. So Jay and Silent Bob, if you are listening, you could be listening. I don't know. Anything, it's possible. Could happen. Yeah, we want to talk to you guys because we think you're rad.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny. So like, and it's no secret or surprise. So my first marriage to Giles, like, he's a dead ringer for Jason Mewes. It's really because I'm like just looking at photos of him online with
It's
between
so
the hair,
true.
and it's really kind of crazy.
Yeah,
It's hard to it's hard to stomach.
that
Sometimes.
could very well be a trigger for Annie. Then maybe we should not do. Maybe we'll
Well,
just
no,
have Kevin Smith on the show.
I have very, all my temperaments with Giles are very, very good. So I can talk about how hot, not a problem.
It's
Yeah.
so funny. Okay, so we have a fun topic. We've kind of been rolling through a variety of best and worst, favorite versus awful, can stomach again, we'll never see again. And so tonight we're gonna do a two-parter. We always do these as two-parters and release them on separate shows. So Annie, what is our theme for today?
So our theme for today is going to be best and worst movie sequels.
Movie sequels. Now we are differentiating this. Well, yeah, it's not the remake, obviously is not the sequel. So the remake, which we've done already, is when you take one movie and you get another cast or another director and you completely remake the same story, basically, which should not be, I guess, confused with a reboot. And apparently a reboot is very different from a remake. according to Jay and Silent Bob. But a sequel, this is just taking the story and having a continuation. So the
Absolutely.
hero or heroes go from one adventure to the next.
Yes.
Or, well, we'll have to roll through that and see who's really going on adventures, or who just grew up and got old, because that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
All right, what do you want to roll with? Worst or best first? Worst to
Let's
first.
start with our worst.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
sounds good. All right. So how about I go first?
Yeah.
Worst.
Sounds good.
All right. So my number 5 is going to be Major League 2, which came out in 1994. And, I like Charlie Sheen. I like a lot of things that he's done, but that movie felt completely wrong without the other two main dudes, without Tom Berenger, without Wesley Snipes, even though the character of Willie Mays Hayes comes back, but he's played by somebody else, and it just doesn't work. Wild Thing kind of becomes a corporate monster and has an agent that he's sleeping with and is doing dumb commercials, and it didn't have the love and feeling of the first Major League, which is an really endearing movie, because it's about a bunch of loser underdogs that nobody thinks is any good. And when they find out why they were pulled together,
Yes.
they wind up, how does Tom Berenger say it? Win the whole fucking thing. And
Right.
there was just none of that in Major League 2. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my number
So
5.
I will agree, but only the fact that I haven't seen Major League 2 because I couldn't bring myself to watch it because I had a feeling that I was going to hate it. Right. Here's why the worst list is hard, because I am dreadfully fearful of sequels because they're typically bad for me. They're like, when I would like Google, worst sequels of all time, it's like I haven't seen so many because I knew they were just going to be horrible. So that's my kind of like disclaimer right there.
Oh yeah, no, that's
So
a
my
fair
number
statement. Totally.
yeah. My number 5 is actually a collection of sequels. And
Oh.
I'm going to go with Nightmare on Elm Street 2 through 5. So basically, Nightmare on Elm Street, when they took this like horribly horrifying character and made him campy and stupid, and like took away scary about, Freddy Krueger. So my kids and I, as you know from podcasts of the past, we love our horror movies.
Yes.
We love Nightmare on Elm Street. I actually liked New Nightmare because they made Freddy scary again. I haven't seen any of the other remakes, but I've seen 2, 3, 4, 5, and Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. And after that, I'm like, that's like they're just horrible. But I'll say this, it's like they're so bad I have to watch them. They're so
Sure.
bad. So they're also a guilty pleasure. I'll put it that way.
Well, there is that. I don't have any. Well, okay. I'll explain my number 3 when we get there. But
Okay.
yeah, there are certainly some really bad movies that become guilty pleasures. I think Chris and I covered that in when we did the worst movies ever made. We did do a guilty pleasure show. I am totally drawing a blank. Yeah, so Speed 2 is not on my list today because it was on my list of worst movies ever made, but it was a sequel. And again, it's like, how do you have Speed without Keanu Reeves? And how do you have any Fast and Furious movie without Dominic Toretto?
Yeah.
But that's another conversation for another day. All right, my number 4 is Batman and Robin. So you had the Batman franchise of the 80s and 90s, in which you had 2 Tim Burton films that were pretty good. The first one being the best one, with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson and Kim Basinger.
Yeah.
And the second one was tolerable too, I think, because Michelle Pfeiffer was a very good Catwoman and you still had Michael Keaton as Batman. Mm-hmm. Then you go to number 3 with Val Kilmer, and that was okay. But who said Joel Schumacher, what made you think George Clooney was going to pull this off? And what made your art and costume director think it was a good idea to put nipples on the Batman costume? And who thought it was a good idea to bring Chris O'Donnell in as the acrobat badass with the earring? Chris O'Donnell with an earring that just was not working for me. Every minute of it is horrific and worthy of pulling one's hair out and poking one's eyeballs in with the pen. It should be number one, but I have
so
another.
bad.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, I'm with
So
you
there
on
you
that.
go. Number 4, Batman and Robin, 1977. Joel Schumacher, rest in peace, I think. Fuck off.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Will I get sued for that?
Right.
Maybe we better
So-
edit that one out.
Out, yeah. So my number 4, I kind of had a definite theme going with part of this, but anyway, so my number 4 is Friday the 13th movies 4 through 10. I liked the first 3. I actually liked the 3D one, but then it just got stupid. And when Jason Takes Manhattan in part 8, it's just like I'm like I have to keep watching these ridiculous movies because so bad. They're so horrifyingly bad, but I have to see them. But they're the worst sequels ever because I mean, how many ways do you kill Jason? You just and then and that's my number 5 and my number 4 connect because the whole Freddy versus Jason movie was an absolute joke. But obviously they're playing on like people like me that like live for campy, shitty horror movies. So, but I love the Jason movies, and I love Friday the 13th Part 2 is probably one of my favorite horror movies of all time, just because that's like the birth of Jason Voorhees. I love the idea that everybody screws it up that Friday the 13th Part 1,
Yes.
spoiler alert, Jason's not really in it. So
Yeah. So which was the was the Friday the 13th with Corey Haim? Was that in 1, 2, or 3, or was that that was number 4, right?
4, which I mean, that actually had a fairly decent ending, but still Corey Haim. I mean, I kind of lost. Yeah,
It was Corey Haim before Lost Boys and Corey Haim before Stand By Me, barely, I think. But I just,
Corey Feldman.
Oh, right. Corey Feldman. You're right. I'm so sorry. Corey Feldman before Lost Boys, before Stand By Me. Okay, so yeah. I guess I like the 3D one too. I don't remember the second one. I may have only seen that once, but yeah, I mean, it always bothered me just a little bit that they didn't stop after number 1, but you talk about Jason and the mother is the one doing the killing, and the reason for the killing is, because of all the teenage sex and stuff. But the ending of the first Friday the 13th is terrifying. It's that little last few seconds of a surprise, like with Carrie or, Blair Witch, that type of where you end and you have the most uneasy feeling in the world because it's really not over.
Yeah. As it was the final chapter, the 4th Friday the 13th movie that Corey Feldman was in.
Okay, but it wasn't the final chapter, was it? It's like the Cher farewell tour. It just doesn't end.
Yeah, it doesn't end. Yeah. So anyway, that's my number 4, Friday the 13th.
All right, cool. All right, so my number 3, and I'm going to put this in context because it's not a bad movie. It is just a bad sequel. And that is from 1990, The Godfather Part 3. Okay. Now, the reason that I say this, because it was still nominated for Best Picture and I think 1 acting nomination for Andy Garcia. But when you lay it next to the rest of the Godfather saga, which has Godfather 1 and Godfather 2, to look at 3 and realize it could have been really, really, really good if Winona Ryder had just stuck around. But instead, Francis Ford Coppola casts his daughter to fill the Mary role after Winona drops out, and she is just terrible. And there is no chemistry with her and Andy Garcia. And the whole Illuminati thing that just kind of, I don't know. It always seemed weird to me that it was there, kind of a distraction, and I didn't like the way that they took out, or I didn't like the way that they ended it for Michael. I just feel like Michael should have had a true demise, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it was bad enough that he had to watch his daughter be killed in front of him, but yeah, in comparison to the others, it's just not good. And so that's why it takes my list's place at number 3.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I'm so glad that she ended up being a remarkable filmmaker.
Mhm.
She was so bad. She was so horribly
She's
bad in
so
that.
bad. She's an
She's
exceptional
she's
writer
amazing
and
behind.
director. Just don't act. Don't.
Yeah, don't act. Yeah. So I'm with you. And I saw that movie, but like I've seen Godfather 1 and 2, God knows how many. I watched The Godfather Part 3 one time only because I didn't like it. I
Well,
love
and another bit of trivia about that movie, strangely enough, that is the first movie I ever went to see by myself in the theater. I don't know why I remember that, but and so you weren't in school yet. That was 1990 was my second
yeah,
senior year. So
yeah,
so 2 years later, you would come to school with me
yeah.
and we would see lots of movies together and theater jump and
Yeah.
yeah, good stuff. Okay, your turn. La la
My number
la.
I'm done with my movie series as being like a group of sequels.
Okay.
My number 3 is 1984. 1984, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So
Ah.
I love Indiana Jones. Raiders of the Lost Ark, probably one of my favorite movies. The posters on the wall of fame in our house of
Mm-hmm.
all the love. But when with Temple of Doom, just the grossness between the bugs and the dinner scene and the ripping out of the beating heart,
Yeah.
it was more than I thought Indiana Jones movies were, and I was silly, classier than that because they turned it into some, I don't know, freak show. It was it was gross. It's too much grossness in it for me. And when you watch Raiders, it's about the characters, it's about the stories. It's I don't know. I just they lost me. They completely lost me with Temple of Doom. So I really hated it. It's maybe it should be higher on my list, but it's my number 3.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
bit of trivia about Temple of Doom, if I remember correctly. It was the first movie to be rated PG-13,
Oh, was it?
I think. And that happened to be where Steven Spielberg and Kate
It
Capshaw
cat.
got it on. And I mean, now that
Yeah.
the endearingness of their relationship, they're still together and they have multiple children, a child. I don't know. One of their children is also an actress, but she was incredibly annoying. She was a terrible heroine to Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones.
I mean,
And didn't that
the best part about that movie was Data from the Goonies. Honestly,
oh yeah, the little
just because I love. Yes,
totally.
Mr. Jones.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Very funny, very funny.
Okay.
Not very funny, not very funny. Okay, my number 2, I
Huh?
will confess that I did not see. However, the notion that they would think that it was a good idea to make a sequel to Mary Poppins
Oh,
is insults my intelligence. I don't care if it's a Disney movie. I don't care if you put Emily Blunt in it, who, is delightful and I love her. And if I were thinking that a Mary Poppins sequel with a new Mary Poppins was a good idea, then I would probably say, great casting, Emily Blunt, but you do know. And you certainly don't do it 50 plus years later when you can't have Julie Andrews do it. And what are you going to do? You could have made it a TV show. And yeah, every week Mary Poppins goes to a new family because that's her thing. She will stay till the wind changes. That her place in this world was to save families and help them come back together again. But if you weren't going to have Julie Andrews do it, then what's the fucking point? That's all I have to say.
Well, they did have
And
the,
all props to Emily Blunt, because Emily Blunt has done some amazing, beautiful work, and she will continue to do so. Just was bad, bad.
yeah. So I did watch it, not because I wanted to see a sequel to Mary Poppins, but because Lin-Manuel Miranda was in it.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, it was not great. I'm with you on that one. I couldn't tell you one of the songs. Emily Blunt does have a nice voice.
that's
It was
good
a
to
bad
know.
idea. I wish that they would have just written I wish Lin-Manuel Miranda would have written another movie that they could have done together, because
Yeah.
they have good chemistry. But yeah,
Did he write that?
no,
Oh,
he was
okay,
just
okay.
he played Bert. Well, no, he played Jack, a former apprentice of Bert from the original film.
Oh, okay. All righty. Well, yeah, maybe Lin-Manuel Miranda will write something that he and Emily can be in and do together. But anyway,
That would
okay, you got
my
a number 2 coming.
two is Superman 2 from 1980. I loved the first one,
Oh yeah.
and I know that they were trying to like continue the story with the villains caught in the, space thingy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it's been so long since I've seen it that I'm not very
Mhm.
good at thinking about the film itself, because it's so bad that I don't ever want to watch it again. Now, having said that, Superman 3 was probably worse, but I love it. And I've
Because it's so ridiculous. Richard Pryor. Oh my God.
seen Superman 3 like 50 times and I can quote it. It's got some of my favorite like quotes, because Richard Pryor is ridiculous, but he's so good in that movie. It's a terrible, horrible movie. So I almost like 2 and 3, and I didn't see 4, so I could probably lump that one in there too. But yeah, Superman was good. Clark Kent and of like, or personification of what like Superman, like what we all visualize him to be, right?
Yeah.
Um, so but yeah, it's a stinker.
No, I did not enjoy it either. And I have to tell you, here, Lois, come with me to my super cold fortress of solitude and let's get it on an ice block. Like, really?
He dumps her like a hot, like a ton of bricks, and goes after Lana Lang, you
Yes.
know, adorable redhead. But anyway.
Yeah. Crazy.
All right.
Okay. So
Your
before I share my number 1, let's share our honorable mentions, in
okay.
which I go down your previous rabbit hole of horror films. So my honorable mention of worst movie sequels is any and every Halloween movie that came out after part 2, which would have, of course, include every single stupid reboot and Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween Ends. Like, come on, give that woman something else to do, please. She's
Yeah.
funny. She's a funny actress, which we
Yeah.
all were, that was proven by things like, oh, what, the True Lies that she did with Arnold. And then Kevin Kline's Oscar. I'm going to forget. What?
It's called Wanda.
Yeah, Fish Called Wanda. So she's a brilliant comedic actress. But yeah, so just no more Halloween movies. Michael Myers just
Yeah.
can die now, for real.
Yeah.
Please,
So
God begging you.
I'm going to make that my honorable mention too, because like we watch them because they're horror movies, and we took a couple off of the list of great horror movies this weekend. Knocked them off the list. Was like, wow, that's like 4 hours I'm never getting back.
Yeah.
But I keep watching them because I'm an idiot.
There's always going to be hope, though. Like, you have hope when you have a genre that you love, that somehow something will sneak in and be better than you thought it was. There's always that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my story about my awful horror movies I watched this weekend another time.
Okay.
So, all right. Number 1, worst sequel of all time.
My number 1 worst sequel of all time is Exorcist II: The Heretic from 1977. And so if you're a follower of the show, you already know that Exorcist, the first Exorcist from 1973, was my number 1 scariest movie of all time. I think it is the penultimate horror film. I think everything about that first film is brilliant and amazing. And with the exception of number 3, they could have just quit, but they didn't. They made this, and again, like, I've seen it once and I don't need to ever see it again because, like you said before, that's just how terrible it is. I mean, they even brought Richard Burton in, and they're trying to kind of help Reagan deal with her trauma. Of course, they want to help her deal with her trauma, but we didn't need a movie about it. So I'm going to leave it at that because it had nothing to do with the first film other than Reagan came back and was trying to deal with her trauma, and Richard Burton was trying to help her. And it's just.
And I honestly, I have not seen it because I could not bring myself to watch it. So
You can just skip it and watch number 3 because number 3 is actually a very well made film. And I like what number 3 should have been number 2. Let's do that. And
Okay.
you could have still brought back different characters to play Kinderman and Father Karras, although they brought they brought Jason Moore back to play Father Karras.
Yeah.
But the relationship between Father Dyer and Lieutenant Kinderman, that it worked with George C. Scott and the curly haired guy. So yeah, they should have just made that instead of the heretic and moved on. But yeah, so for those reasons and many, many others, that is my number 1 worst sequel of all time. Sorry, Linda Blair.
All right.
What's yours?
So mine, we'll have another discussion about this. So I honestly, my worst sequel is also another guilty pleasure. It's the 1983, The Sting 2. I love them, but it is one of the worst sequels because when you compare it to the original, it's kind of like your Major League. So like The Sting, the original Sting is got to be in my top 10 all-time favorite, and that's that's a lot, right? But The Sting 2, God love him, Mac Davis. I love him. He's adorable. Jackie Gleason, plain fool, that doesn't get any better than that. But it was just a horrible movie. I still love it. It's a guilty pleasure, but in terms of sequels, you can't top Robert Redford and Paul Newman and Robert Shaw playing poker. It's not going to happen. So that's my number 1, The Sting 2 from 1983.
Oh my gosh. And you're right, because we've watched it multiple times and had a couple good snickers and chuckles over lines.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to picture because there was still a character of Doyle Lonnegan. He was just played by somebody else, right? I don't even remember now. I'm trying to remember who they put in there.
Carl Malden. I'm getting the name wrong.
Was it?
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Carl Malden from the American Express commercial.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and he won an Oscar for Streetcar Named Desire. Like 70 years ago he did. Yuki. Wow.
So Jackie Gleason played Fargo Gondorf. So he was, I think, brothers with.
Oh.
I have to Google this shit because
Fargo Gondorf.
I don't know that there's any I don't know if there's any connection. Gondorf's young protege, Jake Hooker. So yeah, because Mac Davis plays Jake Hooker.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that was probably coming off of Mac Davis.
Anyway, it's a hot mess. It's terrible.
Unfun.
Yeah. Because they changed the names around because the original names were based on real con men in real life. So instead of Johnny Hooker, it became Jake Hooker. Instead of Henry Gondorf, it became Fargo Gondorf. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Well, 0%.
Guilty pleasure. Yeah, shoot, I'm trying to think. No, that's from Star Trek 2. Never mind. So let's recap before I go down a big nasty rabbit hole. So my honorable mention was basically every Halloween sequel after the second one. Then number 5, Major League 2. Number 4, Batman and Robin. Number 3, Godfather 3. Was that on purpose? I don't know. Number 2, Mary Poppins Returns. And number 1, Exorcist 2, The Heretic. Bleh. I just threw up a little in my mouth. Not like Linda Blair threw up all over Father Karras, but you got the picture.
Nice vomiting go on there.
Mm.
So I echoed and shared your honorable mention with every Halloween sequel ever made. And then 5 and 4 were basically all the sequels for Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. 3, Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. If I ever see another heart being pulled out of a person's chest and still beating, I'm going to call bullshit. Number 2, Superman 2. And number 2, which, even though I love it, it's still one of the worst movie sequels ever made. Are you there?
Yes. So you froze yeah, you froze on me, and
Okay.
your explanation of number 1 was really long and drawn out. So
Oh,
tell us your
well,
number 1 again and why.
okay. So I'm sorry. My number 1 was The Sting 2,
Mhm.
even though it is one of my favorite guilty pleasures and it's fun for me to watch. It's still one of the worst movie sequels of all time because there's no way it can possibly follow the.
Correct. Correct. Okay. So are you still there? It's like
Mhm.
it's like you slow way,
I'm
way
here.
down. You slow way, way down and then you freeze and I can hear you, but I can't see you. That's weird.
Yeah.
But you're in the living room. You have good internet in your living room, so I don't know why that's happening. Anyway, we will for sure cut that out. So that is our worst 5, 10, probably 20 worst movies right there. So you got a bargain today, y'all, because we've saved you all this extra time of just don't invest in those stupid horror sequels. And we will be back on another episode very shortly to discuss our top 5 favorite movie sequels, the best movie sequels in our humble opinions. But until then, I'm Chris McPeak and she is Annie Pruitt, and we will catch you on the flip side. So later.
Love you, sis.
Love you. Ooh, ooh, be doo.